तिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरि वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणि निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणि जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. We'll also read the verses 12 and Srimad Bhagavatam. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam dhiraye Susrusro Shraddhadanasya Vasudeva Katharuchihi Syanmahatsevaya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishepana Shrunvatam Swakatha Krishna Punyasravana Kirtana Hridayantasto Hyabhadrani Vidunoti Suhritsatam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki तदा रजस्तमो भाव कामलोभादयश्च ये चेतयेतैरनावृत्तं स्थितं सत्त्वे प्रसीदति एवं प्रसन्नमनसो भगवद्भक्तियोगतः भगवत्तत्त्वविज्ञानं मुक्तसङ्गस्य जायते विद्यते हृदयग्रन्थिश्चिद्यन्ते सर्वसंशयः क्षीयन्ते च कर्माणि दृष्टये वात्मनीश्वरे ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय. So we are continuing our discussion from Canto 1, Chapter 10, Text 20. Anyonyamasit sanjalpa उत्तमश्लोकचेतसां कौरवेन्द्रपुरस्त्रीणां सर्वश्रुति मनोहरा. Once more. अन्योन्यमासीत् सञ्जल्पा उत्तमश्लोकचेतसां कौरवेन्द्रपुरस्त्रीणां सर्वश्रुति मनोहरा. अन्योन्यमासीत् सञ्जल्पा उत्तमश्लोकचेतसां कौरवेन्द्रपुरस्त्रीणां सर्वश्रुति मनोहरा. Synonyms, word to word meanings. Anyonyam, among each other. Asit, there was. Sanjalpa, talking. Uttama shloka, the supreme who is praised by the selected poetry. Chetasam, of those whose hearts are absorbed in that way. Kauravendra, the king of the Kurus, Pura, capital, Strinam, all the ladies, Sarva, all, Shruti, the Vedas, Manohara, attractive to the mind. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is sung in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. I will read it one more time. Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is sung in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in all the Vedic literatures, the goal is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Factually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in such literatures as the Vedas, Ramayana, Mahabharata. And in the Bhagavatam, they are specifically mentioned in respect to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, while the ladies on the tops of the houses in the capital of the kings of the Kuru dynasty were talking about the Lord, their talk was more pleasing than the Vedic hymns. Anything sung in the praise of the Lord is Shruti Mantra. There are songs of Thakura Narottama Dasa, one of the Acharyas in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, composed in simple Bengali language, but Thakura Vishwanath Chakravarti, another very learned Acharya of the same Sampradaya, has approved the songs by Thakura Narottama Dasa to be as good as Vedic mantras. And this is so because of the subject matter. The language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. The ladies, who were all absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord, developed the consciousness of Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord, and therefore, although such ladies might not have been very learned scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise, still, whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. The Vedic hymns in the Upanishads are sometimes indirectly directed to the Supreme Lord, but the talks of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord, and thus they were more pleasing to the heart. The ladies' talks appeared to be more valuable than the learned Brahmanas' benedictions. Thank you all devotees for joining, and please bless me so that I can speak something meaningful representing the messages of our disciples of Krishna. As a service for my benefit. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So, the context here is, as we are hearing from the past few days, that Lord Sri Krishna is departing Hastinapura and going to Mathura, sorry, not Mathura, to Dwaraka. So during that time, how each devotees have responded. So Sutta Goswami is explaining to Sonaka Rishi and other rishis there. So that's what the discussion going on. So how the ladies of the relatives of Krishna, how they responded, and how the ladies of Kuru dynasty, how they responded. It was on the class. Bhadra Govinda Prabhu explained very nicely the Indian culture based on that verse, and then how Brahmanas responded. Brahmanas in Hastinapura responded, that which yesterday Panduranga Gopal Prabhu covered, and also how intimate associates of the Lord, like Arjuna, Uddhava, Satyaki, how they were rendering service. That was also covered. Now today it is about the response, who the ladies of Hastinapura, they are not relatives, but they are living in the city of Hastinapura. So they are general public who are living in Hastinapura. So how they were discussing that, what they were doing when Lord Krishna was departed. So that is the context here. So what they were doing, they were, as it says in the translation, absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord. So who is sung in the select poetry. The ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him. So the Sanskrit word here is Anyonyam, among each other. Pasi, there was Sanjalpa. Sanjalpa is the talk. So we heard a similar word. Jalpa is generally for the talking, and Sanjalpa is for probably the good talks, because there is another word, Prajalpa, which we know from Nectar of Instruction, that Prajalpa we should avoid to progress in devotion service properly. It's a discipline, basically. So the word here, Sanjalpa, is the ladies were talking about the Lord Sri Krishna, about his transcendental qualities, and about Lord basically. In fact, the description of the ladies comes in the following verses. In fact, that is the subject matter of the following verses. So I don't want to go more there. But in principle, you can understand they were talking about Krishna and his qualities. Right? So, and another important word in this sloka is Uttama Shloka. Uttama Shloka, Prabhupada translates as the supreme who is praised by the select poetry. And Prabhupada addresses this also in the purport. So, and yeah, you can see here. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in all the Vedic literatures, the goal is the personality of God, Sri Krishna. Factually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in such literatures as the Vedas, Ramayana, and Mahabharata. And in the Bhagavatam, they are specifically mentioned in respect to the Supreme Lord. So here, one important thing that we can recognize here is the last word in the translation. This talk of the ladies was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas, right? So basically these hymns, which my understanding is what the previous text, Brahmanas were chanting the hymns, glorifying or blessing the Lord in both ways actually. So because Lord was in the procession, so Brahmanas were chanting those hymns, and these ladies were talking about Krishna on the rooftops. So this talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. So it appears that this talk is more pleasing and attractive to general public, or at least it is spoken by Sutta Goswami, so he is finding it, and also for the Lord Krishna, so it is more pleasing. That's what it says here. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. So now Prabhupada is going into this, why this is so, and he is giving different angles of understanding for this one. So he directly says that at the end, in fact, at the end of the purport, why it is so? Because the language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. The ladies, who are all absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord, develop the consciousness of Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. and therefore although such ladies might not have been very learned scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise, still whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. First of all, even though they were not learned as Brahmanas, but the Lord is giving intelligence to these ladies because they were always absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord. So they developed the consciousness of the Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. So that way, the Lord is empowering these ladies to know the Vedic wisdom, even though they were not scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise. And so that's why Prabhupada is still iterating here. Still, whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. And now he gives the reason here. The Vedic hymns in the Upanishads are sometimes indirectly directed to the Supreme Lord. So this is important for us to understand. So there are so many Vedic literatures, and most of them, in fact, talk about Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, and very few talk about Upasana Kanda, which is Bhakti. And even in those literatures of Bhakti, there are very, very few which directly glorify the Lord, right? So the Vedic hymns in the Upanishads are sometimes indirectly directed to Supreme Lord. So if you see in a big picture of all the Vedic literature, and in fact Prabhupada says here in the beginning, it's connecting here. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in all the Vedic literatures, the goal of the personality of God is Krishna. Factually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in such literature as Vedas, Ramayana, and Mahabharata. So there are many literatures, all are Vedic literatures. So the glories of the Lord is depicted, but all the Vedic hymns are they are not directly glorifying the Lord, but they are indirectly giving a direction towards the Supreme Lord. So that is why most of the time all Vedic mantras, they may not be directly pleasing, right? Because they are indirectly showing the Lord, not directly. But here now, on contrast, the ladies' talks, but the talks of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord. In fact, what are those direct descriptions of the Lord coming in the next verses? So, in tune to the tomorrow's classes, and thus they were more pleasing to the heart. So again, I will read. But the talks of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord, and thus they were more pleasing to the heart. So, whenever the subject matter is of directly glorifying the Lord, or directly about the Lord, or directly about the devotees of the Lord, it is very pleasing to the heart for everyone actually. The ladies' talks appear to be more valuable than the learned Brahmanas' benedictions. So this is comparison to the previous verse, where Brahmanas were chanting the Vedic mantras to create auspiciousness, and so it appears here, at least Sutta Goswami is indicating that the ladies' talks appear to be more valuable than the learned Brahmana benedictions. Right. So here again we can. I would just want to bring our ISKCON's one of the popular contradictory topic that about the woman, position of women. So some claim that the Vedic culture in general, and also specifically there are some parts of Bhagavad Gita or our literature that we follow where it apparently says that ladies are not intelligent. So, but it's only very contextual. But if you can see here in this purport, it's in fact it is positioning the ladies here more than even Brahmanas. where in fact Vedic culture glorifies Brahmanas. They put Brahmanas in the very top of the chain. But here the ladies are glorified as even better than, it says here, valuable than learned Brahmanas benedictions in this context, right? So because the ladies were absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord. So because they were absorbed in the thoughts of the Lord, so Lord has given the intelligence and Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. So that is why their talks are more pleasing, and particularly they were speaking directly about the Lord. They are not talking indirectly. They are directly talking about the Lord. So that is why they are very pleasing. And so to understand how the Vedic literature indirectly, just to analyze a little more of that point, again, it's given again in the beginning of the purport itself. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in all the Vedic literatures, the goal is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Factually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in such literatures as the Vedas, Ramayana, and Mahabharata. So if you remember this particular line in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Vedic literature, in all the Vedic literatures, the goal is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So I just want to refer that particular in Bhagavad Gita itself. It is text 15:15. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking. I will read the translation. I am seated in everyone's heart. From me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgiveness, unforgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So the Sanskrit goes, Sarvaisya chaham pudisannivisto matta smritir gnanam apohanam cha Vedaischa sarvair aham eva vedyo Vedanta krit veda videha chaham. So in this purport, again, Prabhupada emphasizes that all the Vedanta Sutras, Upanishads, Puranas, all these are actually glorifying the Lord, and the Lord is the goal of all these Vedic literatures, as explained here in the as explained here in this verse purport. And another important point is I want to bring that even though here Prabhupada is actually bringing the glories of the Bhagavatam, because and in the Bhagavatam they are specifically mentioned in respect to the Supreme Lord. So even though there are many Vedic literatures like Vedas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, in the Bhagavatam they are specifically mentioned in respect to the Supreme Lord. So the Bhagavatam is direct glorification of the Lord and the devotees. So that is why Bhagavatam is very important. Like it is spoken here at the end, Prabhupada mentioning the literature which is directly glorifying the Lord, that is more pleasing and more valuable. So that is why Bhagavatam plays such an important role in our life as a devotees, particularly in our disciple succession, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself recommended Bhagavatam is for this age as the prominent Pramana, Amala Purana, right? So, and also Prabhupada brings another example in this regard, saying that the songs of Narottama Das Thakur, right? So, so even though they were written in simple Bengali, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura mentions that they're as good as Vedic mantras because of the subject matter, because they're directly glorifying the Lord. Like we can see, for example, I remember one Golokera Premadana Harinama Sankirtana, right? So if you see that song and this particular sentence in that song, Harinama Sankirtana, the Sankirtana of holy name, is actually descending directly from Golokera Premadana, the love of Goloka is descending in the form of holy name, right? Sankirtana movement. So, in fact, that forms the entire, I can say, in a sentence, it is summarizing all our movement, all our dissatisfaction, right? So, to come to that conclusion, how much effort we have to put, a person, an ordinary person, or even an intellectual person, even a Vedic scholar, to come to that conclusion, he has to go through so much. But whereas our acharyas, because of their understanding, they were directly putting that conclusion of the Vedic literatures directly into this simple song where everybody can understand. In fact, that particular song is basically from the Kali Santaram Upanishad, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also mentions that for this Kali Yuga, the 16-word syllable Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the only solace. There is no other solution. So Narottama Das Thakur is taking that and is putting beautifully into this song where everybody can appreciate. So that is why it is glorified as Vedic mantras. In fact, it's as powerful and as valuable as subject matter is concerned as the Vedic mantras itself. And interestingly, Prabhupada compares here, the lady's talks appears to be more valuable than the learned Brahmanas' benedictions. So, I think to conclude the talk, the discussion. So, here the context is the ladies of Hastinapura. They started speaking about the Lord on their rooftops when he was leaving to Madura from Hastinapura. So, and they were talking directly about the Lord. That is why their talks were more pleasing than the hymns of the Lord. And Prabhupada takes this opportunity to glorify Bhagavatam, because Bhagavatam directly glorifies the Lord. Bhagavatam is very valuable and important for us compared to all other Vedic literatures. And also he gives the example of the literature, particularly the songs of Narottama Das Thakur, which are as good as Vedic mantras. So, yeah. And how the ladies became so Krishna conscious because of their service attitude, their thoughts, because of their devotion, love and devotion. They got to know about the Vedic wisdom, and that's why they were able to talk. In fact, if you see the later verses, their talks are really elevated. Right? They talk about the Lord Himself and the creation, and we'll be wondering how come these ladies know all about the Lord so much. But we get a clue here that because they were because of their love and devotion, the Lord given them the intelligence of the Vedic wisdom by His grace. So with that, I want to conclude here. And if we have any discussion or any questions or further topics, please go ahead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to Srila Prabhupada, glories to Guru and Gauranga. Thank you so much for, you're so fortunate to get this verse. I was thinking about that like that. Because at the end of the day, what we need is the Krishna Katha, nothing else other than that. So now this, based on your reading and explaining, I was thinking, what do we really need for human being, especially like us? as a practicing devotee. You don't need any, Prabhupada mentions it's not the language. So we don't need the language, we don't need the jargons. We might explain so many things. Of course, we are doing a presentations because of the mob, the people on the current age, they need this kind of presentations. It's all great. But what touches the heart, not the information, but the transformation happens only by the qualities and pastimes of the Lord, which is Srimad Bhagavatam in a simple terms. And it also, I understand that normally ladies have a soft heart. So, we look at Krishna going, I don't know, sending his friends for, they were hungry, they went to the Brahmin's house. Brahmins couldn't understand. They were doing chanting of mantras, yagnas, etc. But the wives of those Brahmins, they immediately gave everything what they have. So it's a soft heart, what they need. And by simple heart and a soft heart. And what do we really need is just the serving mood and Krishna Katha. Anything else is okay, but what transforms, what touches, what purifies, especially what purifies is Krishna Katha. And now you're come again in this morning Bhagavatam class. You have that you had that fortune to discuss about this, and we're all hearing, and we are churning and churning and churning every day. It's amazing to hear everyday pastime about Krishna. Anyway, it was very heart touching. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for your elaboration. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dhanavad pranam. Prabhuji, the question I have is, while we see that this simple, like Balram Prasad Prabhu explained, this simple-hearted nature, and like how you explained how just Krishna Katha is good enough for the satisfaction of the soul, right? And Bhagavatam is good enough, nothing is more. So what, while we understand theoretically, sometimes we desire something more, something different due to our wayward nature, I guess. How can one be satisfied with the simple process that is given? And while we theoretically understand, practically, how can we be satisfied with that and go deep into it, Prabhuji? I was hoping you can touch on that.
Prabhu, if I just want to repeat the question for my understanding. You are saying that even though we know theoretically Bhagavatam is the complete thing, but sometimes we are not satisfied, or we are looking for something else. Is that what, Prabhu? Or
yes, in one sense, yes. Right? Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have a straight away direct answer, Prabhu. But maybe by our nature is we want some variety. So that is why we look for different things. If we say it's only Bhagavatam, probably with the same topics, the same every day, so we may not, as in a conditioned state, we may not be able to relish them. So I think it's similar to chanting the name, holy names of the Lord, where we know that is the highest to properly chant. We know that theoretically we know, yes, we have to chant, but how enthusiastically, how much we have to do, because particularly we have to do it on a regular basis every day. So then it becomes a mechanical chore rather than an important aspect of our life. So maybe some of these things make it in a unpractical level, make it only keeping Bhagavatam as also like that. I'm thinking about only because of our conditioned nature. So maybe once we start getting the taste and relation, and particularly our acharyas make it more interesting. Obviously, Prabhupada takes purports from different acharyas and puts together here to make the topics more relatable and to analyze the verse in different angles. So apart from that, I don't have any thoughts right now, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. If anyone has a bit more thoughts, please.
No, Prabhuji, I think, you made a point that really struck me, right? Just like how the instructions that are given to us is to chant, keep on chanting, keep on chanting, keep on chanting, and one day we will relish and we will hopefully do 24-hour chanting, right? Smarana always. I think that point really correlated to me with this, right? Maybe do it as a matter of duty, do it as, as yes, if I continue doing it someday, we will like extract the rasa from Srimad Bhagavatam. I think that point really correlated to me, Prabhuji. Thank you for putting that together for me, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. So I think it's already 7:37. We will conclude here. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।